In the horror genre, there are a variety of subgenres, supernatural horror being one of them. And in supernatural horror, there are subsets of that. One such example is that of the Exorcism film, a movie in which someone is possessed by a demon or entity and must have this force expelled, usually by a priest. It sounds highly specific, but the number of exorcism films has been growing rapidly since the 1973 horror classic The Exorcist, based on the novel of the same name. It is widely considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, possibly the greatest, and because of this, there are many pretenders to that throne. The subgenre is so narrow that one would assume there would not be so many exorcism films, but because everyone wants to cash in on The Exorcist, the list of similar movies is quite long. Exorcism films have tropes all their own, devices and characters that appear in virtually all films in this very specific subgenre of horror. The person who is possessed is almost always sympathetic and not some jerk, even though one would assume that forcing a nasty person to do even nastier things would make life easier for the demon. An exorcism film almost always has a character who is deeply skeptical about the fact that a demon has possessed someone, and is making this person perform horrible, disgusting acts. Usually, said skeptic will conduct a series of tests, both psychological and through medicine, to determine what exactly is the real underlying problem. Because in all seriousness, to those with rational minds, it could not possibly be demon possession. Even for those who believe in the supernatural, even a cursory understanding of psychology would allow the average person to assume it is schizophrenia or dissociative disorder or many others. In The Exorcist, a young girl is put through a battery of medical tests, x-rays, what have you, to determine why her behavior has suddenly changed. The doctors give reasonable explanations, but naturally, with this being an exorcism film, they are building towards these notions being disproven, and a real demon emerging later in that movie. In centuries past, when someone was struck with a particularly challenging mental illness, some believed that person was possessed with a demon, having no modern psychiatric knowledge. Even today, with all our advanced science, some cling to the idea that someone with a deep mental disorder may be possessed, although that number has obviously dwindled with the passage of time and the education of the masses. In the recent film, The Devil Inside, we see inside the Catholic Church. In this picture, church officials are trained in the art of exorcism, but are explicitly told to be wary of those claiming to be possessed by demons, because in all likelihood that is not the case. In exorcism movies, even the true believers are skeptics. Even the Vatican knows the science of the situation. In The Exorcist, the skeptic is a priest who is also trained in psychiatry. He is reluctant to even take the case at first, and even discusses humanity's misinformed past about possession versus psychology. Of course, not all exorcism films show the skeptic to be a member of a church. In the recently released film The Conjuring, the skeptic is a police officer. Out of duty to his community and to the afflicted family, he remains in the home to help, but he is naturally doubtful about the supernatural haunting in this house, and the eventual possession of the mother. In fairness to these films, the skeptics are often shown to be sympathetic to what is happening, even if it is very difficult to believe that ghosts and demons are dropping by for a quick possession. In The Last Exorcism, the skeptics are an entire film crew. The movie is all about making a documentary exposing alleged demonic possessions, either those caused by serious mental illness or a conscious effort to make a hoax. The identity of the skeptic changes from movie to movie, but one fact remains constant. The skeptic is always proven wrong. Always. Every single time. Without exception. After an exhaustive search, not one exorcism horror film can be found in which the allegedly possessed person was proven to be merely mentally ill, or causing a hoax. There are a few close calls. The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Lovely Molly are said to be ambiguous, but that is not the same thing. The Last Exorcism nearly ends with the possession debunked, but in the final minutes the demonic cult is revealed to be true. The fire takes the supernatural shape of a demon, and if there was still any doubt, the sequel is far more blatant about the demon being real. There is an exorcism scene in the Romanian film Beyond the Hills, in which there is obviously no demonic possession, but we, as the audience, are never made to believe they are possessed. The exorcists are just intolerant, terrible people. Also, this is not a horror movie. If there is a horror movie out there in which someone's possession is the focus of the film, skeptics come to debunk, and it is effectively shown to be untrue, It is either a rare film that almost nobody has heard about and is not in print, or it exists only in our imaginations. Movies sometimes employ fake-outs as twists to the story. The twist in The Usual Suspects contradicts much of what we, the audience, saw in the narrative, reducing much of the story to someone's efforts to obfuscate the law. The Wizard of Oz ends with Dorothy realizing that it may have all been a dream, and that she put her friends' faces onto the characters of the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion in the manner that dreams often cast people in our lives in different roles. Twists and turns in the plot, even those that invalidate part of the story earlier in the film, do not necessarily hurt the film. It can even enhance it. So, with this in mind, why would a film in which the supposedly possessed individual turns out not to be possessed but mentally ill make for a good horror movie? Because someone who, say, murders a group of people because of a disorder can be more terrifying than a demon. See, in movies, demonic possession can be cured. You just sprinkle holy water and read from the Bible. Many serious mental illnesses that can result in violence can only be treated, not cured. It makes for a more frightening scenario. Mental illness is real. It is fact. Demonic possession almost certainly is not. A sense of, this could actually happen when leaving the movie theater is an unsettling feeling. Of course, this notion does not endorse the idea that all exorcism horror movies should end with scientific explanations. If they were all like that, or most of them were like that, the twist would no longer be viable, and the subgenre would become somehow staler than it is right now. That being said, why can't there be some with this ending? Why is it so impossible to find such a film? Everyone has been trying to remake and capitalize on exorcism films since the 70s. At some point, someone needs to try to make the Demonomania film, because there are only so many ways to remake The Exorcist over and over and over again.